Hi guys, hello, welcome to my channel. With fall quickly approaching, I thought it'd be the perfect time to film the next installment in my kind of like new releases series that I've been kind of doing the past year, which is basically every single season I come out with a long old list of new releases that are coming out that season. And this one's gonna be a little bit shorter in terms of months than my last ones have been, just because technically the last day of fall is like after Christmas or like right before Christmas. But for me personally, once Thanksgiving is over, it's winter. So for this like fall release video, we're just gonna be focusing on October and November. Also too, before we get started, per usual, there will be a list in the description of every single book that I talk about in this video. And without further ado, let's go ahead and start with our October books, which is definitely the bulk of the list. And within October, we do have several different release days. The first being the 1st. And the first one I have to talk about is I'll Be Waiting by Kelly Armstrong. The thing that drew my attention immediately with this book was the little Ouija board. I don't know what that's called, but the little thing that you move around on the Ouija board on this cover, that is what drew me to this. I don't really think those things are real, but it's kind of one of those things where I don't want to risk it. So I myself will probably never use a Ouija board. Not even probably, I will never use a Ouija board, but anything to do with kind of like witchy haunted things, especially for October, I'm down. This one says it's a spellbinding new tale of supernatural horror involving a haunted house, seances, lost loved ones, and a sinister spirit out for blood, which, again, perfect for October. Basically in this one, we have our main character, Nicola, who was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis as a child. So she never expected to live past childhood, but she does. And she's in her 30s. She marries Anton, who is like the love of her life. But months after they get married, he ends up dying in a car crash. And basically on his like last dying breath, he says, "I'll be waiting for you," which all of that just sounds horrendous. But then this little moment that her and her husband have becomes public because apparently someone saw it and like went to the press about it. But this person is like claiming that her husband said this like after his passing, like his ghost was hovering over him and said these things. So Nicola and her friends and family, to kind of like stop these rumors or this like media kind of thing that's going on, end up finding a reputable medium to kind of like clear up whether or not the husband had said this post or pre-death. But it says the medium barely has time to begin his work before things start happening. Locked doors mysteriously open, clouds of insects engulf the house, Nicola hears footsteps and voices and the creak of an old dumbwaiter in an empty shaft. Throughout it all, she's haunted by nightmares of her past, because unbeknownst to the others, this isn't her first time contacting the dead, and Nicola isn't her real name. This sounds so good. Next up, we have A Grim Reaper's Guide to Catching a Killer by Maxi Dara. And this just has like the cutest, most fun looking cover and title. So that's kind of what initially drew me to it. And according to the synopsis, they're having like Grim Reapers basically be like a job title that you can have. And it sounds like there's multiple people that can be a Grim Reaper. So she's just one of many. And it says she's mid-divorce, pregnant, and terrified she doesn't have what it takes to be a good mom. So that's our main character. Her name is Kathy. And basically while doing her job as a Grim Reaper, she comes across a client. He insists that he's been murdered and he does not want to move on until she finds out who murdered him. So she has basically 45 days, according to the synopsis, to solve this mystery of who murdered her client. I don't know, this just sounds really fun. I don't know if it's going to be like necessarily at the top of my list for this year, but I think this could be a really cute one and definitely a good one for October. Next up, we're very much switching it up from the spooky season vibes. This is Nothing Like the Movies by Lynn Painter, which is the follow-up to Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, which is one of the first books that I read when I started getting back into reading a couple of years ago. And it just gave me so many butterflies, so many feels, and I have since completely fallen in love with Lynn Painter's writing. I've literally read every single book that she's come out with since. Better Than the Movies is essentially about two kind of like childhood enemies. They end up fake dating and it's just the cutest freaking little book ever. And this one is kind of like what happened after Better Than the Movies between these two. And I am just so excited. But again, I am a little nervous just because I loved Better Than the Movies so much and I loved the two characters, which are Wes and I can't remember the girl's name. Liz. Wes and Liz. I was just so obsessed with them and their little relationship was just, again, the cutest thing ever. And I'm scared for what's gonna happen in the second one. Like, I don't want the vibes to be ruined, you know? And then kind of like jumping back into the October spooky fall vibes, we have Fang Fiction by Kate Stayman London. And this is another one where the cover immediately drew me in. Like, I love the cover of this book. It looks spooky, but also really fun, which are kind of like the vibes that I'm going for this season, this like October, because last year I pretty much stacked my October TBR with nothing but horror, and it got old real quick. I'm not a horror reader. I like the occasional one every once in a while, but having a full month of reading nothing but thrillers and horror books was just not a good idea for me personally. This year, we're making sure that, yes, I will still have a couple of like horror and thrillers and things like that, but this year I also want to make sure that I'm prioritizing some kind of like cutesy, romancy kind of Halloween vibe things as well. And this looks like it could definitely fit the bill. So this one is basically about Tess, who it says does not actually believe vampires exist, but she does have a favorite like vampire novel series called Blood Feud. And it says that she dabbles in online conspiracies about Blood Feud being real, but again, she doesn't actually believe that they exist. But then it says, ... until one walks through her door. It turns out the sexy villain of Blood Feud is trapped and only Tess can rescue him. Eager to escape her life, Tess agrees to help, and soon she's on a secret island where the sun never shines, surrounded by deadly vampires. And the most terrifying of all, she's falling in love with one of them. This is definitely giving me like a novel love story by Ashley Poston, but make it spooky, make it vampires. And I did do a reading vlog recently where I read a novel love story, and I'm gonna be honest, it was not my favorite book. If you're not familiar with that book, basically it's about our main character, whose name I cannot remember. She kind of like accidentally stumbles into the real life town of her favorite fictional series. And the idea of that just sounded really appealing to me, but it was the fact that she was in a fictional world that kind of threw me off. As I was reading, all of these troubles that these characters are having didn't feel like they mattered because it wasn't real. You know what I mean? And this again is feeling very kind of similar to that. Basically, she's a fan of this Blood Feud novel series, and she ends up kind of being put into this fictional world. So for this to feel kind of like very similar to that does make me a little nervous, but again, I feel like it could be really fun and like perfect for spooky season. So we're gonna give it a shot potentially, and we'll see how that goes. Next up, we have The Crescent Moon Tea Room by Stacy Sandusky. I think that's how you say the last name. There's a little quote at the top of the synopsis that says, an impossibly endearing debut novel about three clairvoyant sisters who face an unexpected twist of fate at the bottom of their own delicate porcelain cups. And kind of like briefing over the synopsis, it looks like this one again is about three sisters who own a tea shop, but something kind of like happens in the town that ends up pulling the sisters apart when they've always kind of been together because their parents died, I guess when they were younger. It doesn't really say specifically, but I'm assuming. But now their lives are kind of being pulled apart in different directions, and they're trying to kind of like figure out a way to come back together. I like the idea of kind of a cutesy cozy kind of read for October, and this sounds exactly like what that's gonna be. And that was our last book for our October 1st releases. The next couple that we have are gonna be released on October 8th. And the first one is called The Last One at the Wedding, and this is a thriller. And this one is mostly intriguing to me because it is from the author of Hidden Pictures, which was one of my favorite thrillers that I read a couple of years ago. So I'm super excited to read some more from this author. It's about Frank, who is estranged from his daughter Maggie, but she randomly like calls him up to invite him to her wedding, and he gets really excited because he's hoping this will be like a good opportunity to reconnect with her. But when he gets to the wedding, he learns that his daughter is marrying a tech billionaire named Aiden, and that kind of makes him feel like out of place because all of Aiden's family and friends and stuff are rich and things like that. So he just feels kind of awkward, but again, he just wants to reconnect with his daughter. So he tries to just focus on that. But then he realizes that the people of the town are kind of hostile towards Aiden and his family. So he feels like that's kind of weird. And the synopsis just kind of ends with saying that Frank needs to learn more about Maggie's fiance's family. Super, super vague, but I'm still intrigued. And then the last book that we have for October 8th is The Nightmare Before Christmas. And this one has a really fun premise. This one says, Nicholas Cole Claus used to love Christmas until his father, the reigning Santa, turned the holiday into a PR facade, which I love the fact that Santa's son's name is Cole. That is like the funniest thing ever to me. But it says, Cole will do anything to escape the spectacle, including getting tangled in a drunken, supremely hot makeout session with a beautiful man behind a seedy bar one night. But the heir to Christmas is soon commanded to do his duty. He will marry his best friend, Iris, the Easter princess, and his brother's not-so-secret crush. Things go from bad to worse when a rival arrives to challenge Cole for the princess's hand, and Cole comes face to face with his mysterious behind-the-bar hottie, Hex, the Prince of Halloween. So basically we have Cole, the son of Santa, who is being forced to marry the Easter princess, who his brother has a crush on, but then we have Hex, the Prince of Halloween, who also is trying to marry the Easter princess, but then also Cole and Hex have hooked up before. The tangled webs we weave. I am so excited for this book. It sounds so cute and fun. Next up we have a book being released on October 14th, and this is called The Bastard King, and it is from the Bastard Duology. Just from that title, I am already intrigued. There's a quote at the top that says, "With one fiery embrace, I could destroy her, ... or love her until the end of time. A dragon without a family, an outcast running from her past, they might be able to stop the impending doom if they learn to trust each other." And briefly kind of going over the synopsis, it looks like this is a romance between a human woman and a dragon? Question mark, question mark. I'm hoping it's more of like a dragon shifter kind of a thing because I've never read one of those before and I've definitely been intrigued recently to pick one up. So this would be perfect for that. Now let's go ahead and move on to October 15th releases, and we do have a few. And the first one is actually a book that I've already read before, but it's a special edition that's being released and I'm very excited about it. So this one is Desperate Measures by Katie Robert. I have a little bit of a history with this book in this series. Basically, when I very first started this channel, I picked it up from my local library on a whim, did not realize it was a smut series, and I was a little taken aback. I was very new to spice in general when I first read this book, and one of the like tropes in it was just still not something that I like. I think it was like called like consensual non-consent or something like that. Basically, the female lead was doing and saying everything as like a no, I don't want this to be happening, and the guy's kind of like doing it anyway, but like as a reader you're supposed to be okay with it because in her inner dialogue she is enjoying it. It still made me uncomfy. It wasn't my favorite. I don't like that kind of trope. If a girl is outwardly saying no, it's no, guy, okay? And after reading this, I actually did decide that I was not going to continue the series, but then a few months later I grabbed another one randomly from the library and very quickly after that like binged the entire thing. So I have read every single book in the series, and there was one point while I was reading this series that I wanted to start buying them because if I like a book I want to own it, but I really just did not like the covers for this series at all. But this cover is so cool, and I'm really hoping we get covers like this for all of them. Next up we have Bull Moon Rising. I'm a big fan of like the zodiac and things, and this just looks like a zodiac type of book. Plus I am a Taurus and that is the bull. So everything about this cover really drew me in. But the thing that is making me even more excited for this book is the fact that it's by Ruby Dixon, who is the author of the Ice Planet Barbarians series, and I have been eating that series up. That's basically a smut series about some human women that have been abducted by some aliens and romance ensues. It's been so good, so I'm excited to read something else by her. I actually have no idea what this book in particular is about. And honestly, I don't even want to read the synopsis for this. I kind of want to go into this one more blind. So if you want to check out what this one's about, again, I will have a list of all these books linked down below. And then the last two that I have for October 15th, it wouldn't be a new release video from me if I didn't throw in a couple of literary fictions, purely because the covers look really cool and I really want to get them. Specifically this one, this is Blood Test by Charles Baxter, and it does say a comedy on it, but also I've read a couple of books, like literary fiction books, where it was supposed to be a comedy and they weren't funny to me. Literary fiction in general just has not in the past done it for me, but I keep trying because I need to own covers like this. A comic novel about a divorced Midwestern dad who takes a cutting-edge medical test and learns that he has a predisposition to murder. So that does sound really interesting. Obviously the synopsis has a lot more details about that, but I'm just gonna leave it there. Honestly, for me personally, I think I'd rather just know that going into this book so that I don't kind of like unhype myself up, if that makes sense. Like I don't want to read too many details about all the sad things that could possibly happen in this book, because I do feel like literary fiction, at least the ones that I end up picking, seem to kind of have like a really sad undertone for the most part. And I don't like reading sad books. That's my main issue with literary fiction so far. So that's all I'm gonna say about that one. And then the second one that I have is definitely gonna be sad. Like I can't see a world where this is not gonna make me cry. But this one is called Libby Lost and Found, and this one's by Stephanie Booth. Again, the cover is what drew me to it originally, but this one is basically about a woman who finds out that she has Alzheimer's. I personally have had family members with Alzheimer's, and it is a very, very sad disease. If you've had a family member or a friend or anyone close to you that has had it, it's a very hard thing to deal with. And I'm starting to like get like a lump in my throat just thinking about it. So this book is for sure gonna make me cry like a baby, but because I actually have personal experience with that, it is making me more intrigued to want to read it, even though it's sad. So there's that one. Next up we have a book that's going to be released on October 22nd, and this one is called Bloodguard by CC Robson, and this one again is another one that I put initially on this list purely because of the cover and the sprayed edges. Laith of Grey thought coming to this new land and volunteering to fight in the gladiator arena, vicious, bloodthirsty tournaments where only the strongest survive, would earn him enough gold to save his dying sister. He was wrong, and they took everything: his hope, his freedom, his very humanity. Then Laith meets Maeve, an elven royal who is everything he despises, everything he should hate, until the alluring princess offers him the one thing he needs most, a chance to win the coveted title of Bloodguard and his freedom. So I think there's some kind of like trial element to it, and I love, 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 love a like fantasy trial to the death moment. So very excited for this book. Next up we have On Wings of Blood by Briar Bolin, and that is going to be released on October 25th. The cover of this looks super cool, and this is a dark vampire and dragon romantasy. There's a quote at the top that says, "What do you get if you mix Harry Potter with Fourth Wing, Zodiac Academy, a dash of Arthurian legend, and lots of vampires? Bloodwing Academy." And that's really all I want to read for the synopsis of this one, because I'm already so very sold on this. We have Harry Potter and Fourth Wing vibes. Zodiac Academy I haven't read yet, but I've heard a lot of good things. That's definitely a series that I want to get into soonish. And then you're gonna add in a ton of vampires, like sold. Vampires are definitely one of my favorite character like tropes, genre, subgenre. I don't know what that would be considered, but like I love a good vampire romance, especially if it's spicy. Those are like my favorite. And then finally, last for our October releases, we have a few that are coming out October 29th. The first being Throne of Secrets by Carrie Maniscalco. I am so excited for this book. This is the second book in the Prince of Sin spin-off series from Kingdom of the Wicked. I have talked about Kingdom of the Wicked so much on this channel. I am so obsessed with that series. If you're unfamiliar, basically it's about 7 princes of hell who each embody one of the 7 deadly sins. And Kingdom of the Wicked mainly focused on the Prince of Wrath, but in the spin-off series, each book focuses on a different prince. So the first one was Envy, and this one is about gluttony, I think. Yes, gluttony. And I would definitely recommend reading Kingdom of the Wicked before you get into this spin-off series. I don't think it's completely necessary. I did actually see a lot of people read Kingdom of the Fallen without reading Kingdom of the Wicked, but I do feel like reading Kingdom of the Wicked first gives you a lot of like insight into the overall kind of like story of the brothers. And also Kingdom of the Wicked did give a lot of backstory on Pride. So at the very least, I feel like if you're wanting to get into this series, you should definitely read Kingdom of the Wicked before you read Pride's story whenever that comes out. I have a feeling it's gonna be last, just because again it was featured quite a bit in Kingdom of the Wicked, like more than any of the other brothers. So anyway, I'm super obsessed with this overall like world, so highly recommend both series. Next up we have another re-release of a book that is already very well known and loved, Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. Not only does it have a cool cover and like sprayed edges, but it also has really cool end papers, but also the hardcover itself has metallic foiling on it, which is one of my favorite elements to any hardcover. I don't need this book at all because I do already own a copy, like a paperback copy of this book, especially because like I liked it, but it wasn't like my most favorite book. But this copy is so cool looking, so I might have to get it. And then last but certainly not least for October, we have Apples Dipped in Gold by Scarlett St. Clair. I have not talked about Scarlett St. Clair really at all this year, but she was, I think, like my most talked about author of the year prior. I am obsessed with everything she's written, and this book in particular is the second book in a series that she started, which is called Fairy Tale Retellings, and I think they're all kind of like mixes of different fairy tales. Don't remember what the first one was exactly, but I remember really liking it. The main thing that like stood out to me about Mountains Made of Glass was the fact that it is kind of a smaller book, but I remember it being so full of stuff. Like there were so many things that happened in that book, and I remember being really impressed by it, especially too because it was also really spicy. And I have read other smaller spicy books that didn't have a whole lot of plot to them. This one, so much plot. And this is another one that I don't really want to read the synopsis for. I kind of want to go into it blind. But again, she does kind of like mix fairy tales together and kind of like does spicy retellings in these books. Now let's go ahead and move on to our November releases. And the very first release date that we have is the 5th. I am so excited for this book. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for it. This is Hexed by Emily McIntyre. And I do believe this is sadly the last and final book in the Never After series. I've been going through these books slowly over the past year. I think I've done reading vlogs on at least a couple of different ones. If you're not familiar with the Never After series, these are basically spicy, smutty books inspired by Disney movies. And this one in particular is inspired by one of my favorite Disney movies, The Little Mermaid. I'm so freaking excited. Again, not to be annoying, but I kind of want to go into this one blind. I've done that with every other one, and it's always been a good time for the most part. There's only been one really in the series so far that I didn't really jive with, which funny enough was actually inspired by one of my least favorite Disney movies growing up. So correlation, maybe. Now let's move on to our next release day for November, which is November 12th. And the first book that we have is Sky Shade by Alex Astor. And this is another book that I pre-ordered already because Barnes & Noble has a really cool special edition of it. So had to get that. And this is the third and I think final book in the Lightlark Saga series, which I have absolutely been loving. The first book I thought had such a cool, unique kind of concept. Basically, there is kind of like a trial process with that book. Unfortunately for me, there is a very prominent love triangle in this series, and the love triangle trope is definitely one of my least favorites because I always end up feeling bad for everyone involved, but also too, I always seem to root for the person that like no one else is rooting for. And I'm gonna be honest, when I finished the second book, I was very annoyed by the love triangle situation, but now that I've had some time to kind of like sit on it, I definitely have to admit it does add a lot to the story. So as far as like this series in particular and Sky Shade, I am very intrigued to see what happens next, who she ends up actually picking. I really hope it's the person I want because I don't know. I don't know. Next up, we have another book cover sprayed edge pick, and this is The Courting of Bristol Keats by Mary E. Pearson. This says a thrilling romantic fantasy full of dangerous fae, dark secrets, and addictive romance. After losing both their parents, Bristol Keats and her sisters struggle to stay afloat in their small, quiet town of Bowes Keep. When Bristol begins to receive letters from an aunt she's never heard of who promises she can help, she reluctantly agrees to meet, and discovers that everything she thought she knew about her family is a lie. Even her father might still be alive, not killed, but kidnapped by terrifying creatures to a whole other realm, the one he is from. Desperate to save her father and find the truth, Bristol journeys to a land of gods and fae and monsters. Pulled into a dangerous world of magic and intrigue, she makes a deadly bargain with the fae leader, Tegan. But what she doesn't know is that he's the one who drove her parents to live a life on the run, and he is just as determined as she is to find her father, dead or alive. So that one definitely sounds cool. And then last for November releases, we have Games Untold by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, another installment in the Inheritance games. I've read the initial trilogy for Inheritance games, but I have not read anything since then. But I did really enjoy the trilogy. And this one I'm not entirely sure how it's going to fit into the Inheritance games because it is basically like a collection of novellas or like short stories, but I'm intrigued. It says romance, luxury, and secrets abound in this thrilling new collection that takes readers deeper into the world of the #1 best-selling Inheritance games series. And then there's a quote that says, "There is nothing frivolous about the way a Hawthorne man loves." Maybe it's like different relationships that the brothers have been in, like before the Inheritance games or after, I don't know. Very intrigued though. Next up we have a release for November 19th. This one is The Songbirds and the Heart of Stone by Carissa Broadbent. This is the third book in the Crowns of Nyxia series. I think that's how you say that. I still have not read the first two, which the first one is something about the Wings of Night. I can't remember exactly what it's called. That first book was kind of described as being like a Hunger Games with vampires, so that is very intriguing to me. So I've been wanting to read the series for literally the longest time. I just haven't gotten into it yet. I really hope to though before the end of the year. Like this series is like at the top of my before the end of the year list. Because also too, the way that this series is going to be kind of like set up sounds really interesting to me. I think there's going to be 6 books total, but they're going to be broken down into 3 different duologies. So the first 2 books were their own duology, and this book, the third one, is going to be the start of the next duology, but they're all obviously interconnected into one series. I've never seen a series of books do that before, but I'm very intrigued and yeah, very excited. Next up we have another September 19th release. This is The Half King, and this is another one with a really cool cover and really cool sprayed edges. This one says, "A king by day, shadow by night," which definitely sounds very intriguing. Ooh, okay, yeah, this one sounds really interesting. It's been a while since I've read the synopsis, but this one is basically about a kingdom who betrayed a goddess. So the goddess ended up cursing the firstborn from every noble family, one with perilous beauty, one with destructive knowledge, one with insatiable bloodlust. But the royal house Mordora, I feel like I'm probably butchering that, received the worst affliction of all. For while the king exists during the day, he fades into nothingness at night, until his 21st birthday, when he will be lost to the shadows forever. And apparently that court brings in an acolyte who is apparently destined to serve the goddess and become a seer, except she ends up not having any powers whatsoever. So she's kind of just like living a lie, hoping, I guess, no one notices that she can't actually foretell the future. And obviously romance ensues between the shadow guy and this faker. So very excited about that. And then very last, but certainly not least, for this entire list, we have Heart-Shaped Lies by Elizabeth, Agamen. And this one's gonna be released on November 26th. This one I believe is a thriller, if I remember correctly. It says, John Tucker Must Die meets A Good Girl's Guide to Murder in this tongue-in-cheek mystery about 3 feuding exes of a social media prank star who are forced to work together to uncover the truth behind his death when his deactivated account resurfaces online with claims that one of them murdered him. So yeah, that's basically what this is about. It's about 3 exes of a social media star who has died and somebody is blaming them, so they kind of like team up together to kind of figure out what actually happened. And that sounds like a lot of fun. That is that. Those are all of the new releases that I am personally most excited for this fall season. And if there's any books that are coming out this October or November that I did not mention that you're really excited for, please leave them down below. You guys always give me such good recommendations. Anyway, I think that is everything that I have to say. I hope you guys have had the most amazing of days, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.